Today I want to tell you about a heartbreaking paradox. There are parents who love their children with every fiber of their being, who sacrifice everything for them, yet these children grow up feeling starved of love. They read bedtime stories every night, never miss a school event, provide everything their child needs, yet somehow, their children's hearts still feel empty. If you're listening to these words and feel your heart tighten, you might be one of these parents. You've given your heart, your time, your energy, but somehow love got lost in translation. Welcome to Where Hearts Rest, where loving hearts find their way home to each other. I'm your companion on this journey to discover the secret that Buddhist masters have known for thousands of years, why the best love sometimes doesn't feel like love at all. In the next hour, we'll explore real family stories together and uncover ancient wisdom that can heal this wound today. Because the story I'm about to share won't just change how you love your children, it might save the relationship you're afraid of losing. This isn't another parenting lecture. This is a gentle awakening to what your heart already knows but has forgotten in the chaos of trying to be perfect. We'll discover why good parents sometimes raise children who feel unloved, and more importantly, how the most profound transformation can happen, not through doing more, but through being present differently. Take a deep breath. Your healing journey begins right here, right now. I want to begin with a story about a family that you'll probably recognize. They live in a beautiful house with a carefully maintained garden. Every morning, breakfast is prepared thoughtfully. School uniforms are ironed perfectly flat. Family photos hanging on the walls radiate happiness. From the outside looking in, this is the very model of a perfect family. But there's a secret this family keeps hidden, a secret that I believe many of us are living with every single day. Behind those photos, during those quiet dinner times, even though they sit at the same table, each person seems to exist in their own separate world. Parents ask about homework, children answer briefly, and then ask permission to return to their rooms. Conversations revolve only around schoolwork, next week's schedule, or tasks that need completing. No one dares mention the growing distance that's creeping in between them. The mother in this story, let's call her Sarah, often lies awake until 2 or 3 in the morning asking herself, why does my child feel so distant from me? I've done everything right. She attends every parent-teacher conference, takes her child to the best tutoring classes, and is always ready to listen when there's a problem. Yet there's still an invisible wall between them that she cannot break through. Sarah doesn't realize she's living in what Buddhist philosophy calls Maya, an illusion about reality. She has confused loving with demonstrating love. She assumes that by fulfilling her role as a good mother, her child will automatically feel that love. But this is the most dangerous illusion we can fall into. Because a child's heart doesn't operate according to adult logic. A heart needs to be seen, understood, felt, not just cared for. And when I discovered this through the story I'm about to tell you, I understood why children raised in love can still feel empty inside. Why families that have everything can lack the most important thing of all. Take a moment and ask yourself, in your family, how much time is truly spent connecting soul to soul? Because what I'm about to share next will make you completely reconsider how you're expressing love to your child. And that's the story of a father that I'm certain you'll see yourself in. This father, let's call him David, has a familiar phrase that you've probably heard or perhaps even said yourself: "I work because I love you." He rises at 5 a.m., works until 10 p.m., all to ensure his child can attend the best school, live in the best house, have opportunities he never had. Every time his child wonders why Daddy is always busy, he answers with sincere conviction, "Daddy works because he loves you." Every time his child wants Daddy to stay home and play, he explains with all the sacrifice evident in his voice, "Daddy has to earn money so you can have a good future." But there's something David never suspects. While he's sacrificing to show love, his child is slowly learning to believe they're not important enough for Daddy to spend time with them. This is the paradox I call the love language paradox. Parents speak in the language of sacrifice and provision. Children listen in the language of presence and attention. Two completely different languages, yet both stemming from genuine love. And here's the most heartbreaking part. The more parents love their children, the harder they work. The harder they work, the less time they have with their children. The less time with their children, the more unloved the children feel. It's a cruel cycle that many families fall into without ever realizing it. In Buddhist teaching, there's a profound concept called attachment, clinging to how we think about love instead of actually feeling real love. David is clinging to the idea that working hard equals love, that providing materially equals caring. But Buddha taught something different. True love is mindful presence. Not physical presence, but presence with your entire soul. The tragic thing is that David is working too much not just to provide for his child, but also to avoid having to truly be present with his child. Because working is easier than sitting down and listening to a child's thoughts, fears, and dreams. Providing materially is safer than sharing emotions. And the result? His child learns a lesson that's never taught directly. Love means being absent. Caring means being busy. And I'm not important enough to be prioritized. But this is only the first layer of truth. Because what I discovered next about the real needs of a child's heart completely changed how I understand love in families. And that's the story of Emma, a child who had everything but was still starving. Emma, The little girl I'm about to tell you about had everything a child could want. A princess, like bedroom, toys that made her classmates envious, the prettiest clothes in class, and parents who ensured she never lacked anything. But Emma had a strange habit that her parents couldn't understand. Whenever guests came to the house, Emma would have inexplicable fits of anger. She would refuse to eat, throw toys, and often say things like, "Nobody loves me," or "I want to disappear." The strange thing was these outbursts only happened when outsiders were present, when the family was trying to appear at their most perfect. Emma's parents were utterly bewildered. They asked themselves, "We've given her everything. Why is she still like this? What more could she want?" They tried buying more toys, taking her to expensive entertainment venues, even changing schools, but Emma's anger only grew more intense. Then one day, in a moment of chance, Emma's mother discovered a breakthrough truth. After the guests had left, while cleaning up, she saw Emma sitting alone in the corner of the room, crying silently. For the first time, instead of asking, "What's wrong with you?" with an irritated voice, she sat down beside Emma and whispered, "I see that you're sad. Would you like to tell me how you're feeling?" And Emma's answer changed everything. "I hate when guests come, because then you and Daddy only care about making everyone think I'm good. You don't see me anymore. You only see how I should be." That was the moment the mother realized. Her child wasn't hungry for food, toys, or money. Emma was hungry to be seen, understood, accepted with all her complex emotions. In Buddhist philosophy, there's a concept called dukkha, deep dissatisfaction arising from seeking happiness in the wrong places. Emma's parents had fallen into this mistake by trying to nurture their child's happiness through external things, instead of creating internal connection. Emma's heart had 3 needs that no toy could replace. To be seen, not as a child who must be good, but as a complete human being with her own emotions and thoughts. To be heard, not so parents could immediately fix or solve things, but just to safely share what was truly in her heart. To be accepted, not when perfect, but even when angry, sad, or confused. And when Emma's mother began practicing this, truly seeing her child, truly listening to her child, truly accepting her child, a miracle happened. Not only did Emma's anger disappear, but she became a radiant, confident, and loving child. But this is only the beginning of the journey. Because the biggest question still remains: why do we, good, loving parents, unconsciously create these distances? And how can we heal wounds that we never knew we were creating? That's exactly the journey we're about to embark on together. Let's return to Sarah's family that we met at the beginning of our journey. After recognizing that she was living in the illusion of the perfect family, Sarah decided to observe more closely what was actually happening in her home. and what she discovered during their family dinners shocked her. Every evening at 6:30, the whole family gathered around the dinner table. From the outside, this was the warm image of a family coming together. But Sarah began to notice details she had never seen before. Her son Josh sat there with eyes looking down at his plate, chewing mechanically. When Sarah asked, "How was school today, honey?" Josh would only respond, "Fine." When she followed up with, "Anything exciting happen?" the answer was still, "Nothing special." Her husband Michael was constantly looking at his phone, occasionally commenting about weekend plans or reminding Josh about homework that needed to be completed. The conversation always revolved around things that needed to be done, responsibilities that had to be fulfilled. During those 30 minutes of dinner, not once did anyone actually look into each other's eyes. Not once did anyone ask, "How are you feeling today?" or, "Dad, is there anything you want to share?" They were eating together, but each person was completely alone. Sarah recognized what Buddhism calls ignorance, living without truly being awake. They had turned dinner, the most sacred time for families, into a task to be completed rather than an opportunity to connect souls. And here was the tragedy. Every day, they had 30 precious minutes to truly meet each other, to share joys, sorrows, thoughts, and emotions. But instead, they used this time to manage life rather than live life. Josh sensed this absence. The boy couldn't express it in words, but in his heart he always felt, "My family is like strangers living in the same house." He longed to share about his experiences at school, about his fears, about his dreams. But the safe space for such sharing simply didn't exist. This was the first step in Sarah's recognition. They were living beside each other but not living together. They shared physical space but didn't share emotional space. In Buddhist philosophy, there's a concept called mindfulness, complete awareness in the present moment. Sarah realized that her family needed to learn how to truly be present with each other, not just physically. But when she tried to change this, she discovered an even greater challenge, one that perhaps you're also facing in your family. After recognizing the lack of connection during family dinners, Sarah decided to make changes. She planned to create meaningful family moments, activities that she believed would bring everyone closer together. The first weekend, she organized a perfect family picnic. She prepared everyone's favorite foods, brought family games, and even created a detailed schedule. 9 a.m. arrive at the park, 10 a.m. play frisbee, 11:30 a.m. snack time, 12 p.m. family conversation time. She expected this would be the day when the family would truly connect. But everything didn't go as she hoped. Josh complained about having to wake up early. Michael kept checking work emails, and no one seemed interested in the family conversation time she had planned. By the end of the day, instead of feeling closer, Everyone felt tired and frustrated. Sarah didn't understand why. She had done everything right, created the perfect opportunity for family connection. Why wasn't everyone cooperating? This is the trap I call the control trap, when we try to control love instead of allowing love to flow naturally. Sarah had confused creating conditions for love with forcing love to happen. In Buddhist teaching, there's a profound principle. Love cannot be forced, only invited. When we try to control how and when love is expressed, we unconsciously create resistance. Josh felt like he was being forced to be happy in the way Mom wanted. He wasn't allowed to naturally feel and express his emotions. Instead, he had to play the role of a grateful and enthusiastic child in a script that Mom had already written. Michael also felt pressure to perform as the perfect father in these meaningful activities, rather than being allowed to naturally interact with his son in his own way. And Sarah? She felt like a failure when her family didn't respond as she expected. She didn't realize that she was trying to control love the same way she controlled everything else in her life. This is the painful paradox of many families. The more they try to create love, the more artificial love becomes. The more they plan for happiness, the more elusive happiness becomes. Buddhism teaches that true love arises from acceptance, not from control. From allowing people to be themselves, not from forcing them to become who we want them to be. Sarah began to ask herself, was she loving her family, or was she only loving the idea of the perfect family she wanted to create? And this question led her to an even deeper realization about the price we pay when we turn love into a performance. While Sarah was struggling with controlling family love, she didn't realize she was creating another pressure, performance pressure. And this is where Emma's story, the little girl we met earlier, connects again with Sarah's journey. Emma, now 10 years old, was living in a family where love was measured by achievements. She had excellent grades, participated in 3 extracurricular activities, and was always praised as the perfect child of the family. But there was a secret Emma kept hidden. She lived in constant fear that if she wasn't perfect, she would lose her parents' love. Every morning, Emma woke up feeling like she had to earn love through behavior and achievements. Emma's parents never said directly, "We only love you when you're good." But through countless small gestures, Emma had learned this lesson. When she got good grades, her parents beamed with pride. When she made mistakes, the atmosphere at home became tense. When she was sad or angry, adults said, "Good girls don't act like that." And so Emma learned that only one part of herself, the good part, the successful part, the perfect part, was accepted and loved. Other emotions, Sadness, anger, fear had to be hidden. This is what Buddhism calls attachment to image, when we love not the real person, but the image we want them to become. Emma was growing up believing that her true self wasn't good enough to be loved. The tragic thing was that Emma's parents did this with all their love. They believed that by encouraging their child to achieve high standards, they were preparing her for a bright future. They didn't realize they were unconsciously teaching her that her worth depended on what she did, not on who she was. The result was that Emma became an anxious child, always stressed, never feeling good enough. She learned to wear a mask of perfection, but inside she always felt empty. She feared failure not because failure itself was painful, but because she was afraid of losing love. David, the father we met earlier, also fell into this same trap with his child. He constantly asked about grades, about achievements, about measurable successes. He rarely asked, "How are you feeling?" or "Are you happy?" And so, a generation of children was growing up believing they had to earn love, instead of being loved simply for existing. But there is hope. Because when these parents begin to see the truth, when they realize that conditional love is hurting their children, that's when miracles begin to happen. And that's what Sarah was about to discover in the moment that would change her life. I'll never forget the moment when Sarah told me about the night everything changed in her family. It was a cold November evening when the power in their house went out unexpectedly due to a storm. Josh was doing homework, Michael was watching the news, and Sarah was preparing for an important meeting the next day. Suddenly, everything was plunged into darkness. No electricity meant no Wi-Fi, no TV, no phones could be charged. At first, everyone was frustrated. Josh complained about not being able to finish his homework. Michael worried about important emails. Sarah stressed about not being able to prepare for her meeting. But after the first 30 minutes of frustration, something strange happened. In the silence of the house without any electronic sounds, they began to hear each other. Sarah lit candles, and the whole family gathered in the living room. There was nothing to do except be together. No screens to look at, no devices to distract them. For the first time in months, they actually looked into each other's eyes. And in that flickering candlelight, Josh began to tell about a dream he'd had. Not about homework or grades, but about wanting to become an artist. Michael, instead of immediately asking about the practicality of this dream, simply listened and asked, "How do you feel when you draw?" Sarah sat there, truly hearing her son talk about his dreams for the first time. She realized that she had been so busy taking care of Josh that she had forgotten to actually know who Josh was. In Buddhist philosophy, moments like this are called satori, moments of sudden enlightenment. Not a grand change, but a simple yet profound recognition of what was always present, but we had missed. The power outage had created what Sarah had been trying to control for months, a sacred space for family connection. But the difference was this time, no one was trying to create it. It was simply allowed to exist. Michael shared about fears at work that he had never told anyone. Sarah spoke about the loneliness she felt trying to make everything perfect. And Josh, for the first time, felt safe to express not just his achievements, but also his fears. This is what Buddha called pure present moment, when we're not trying to become someone else, not trying to create something else, just simply being present with what is. In those 3 hours without electricity, Sarah's family experienced deeper connection than they had in the previous 3 months. No plans, no organized activities, no goals to achieve. Just pure presence with each other. When the power came back on, no one rushed back to their devices. They sat there a bit longer, as if not wanting to break something sacred that had just happened. And Sarah realized this is what her family had been longing for all along. Not perfect activities or organized moments, but simple, genuine presence with each other. But how could they create moments like this without needing a power outage? How could she truly listen to her child? That was the next lesson Sarah was about to learn. After that night of the power outage, Sarah was determined to discover how to create the connection her family had experienced. She began studying the art of listening, not the kind of listening to respond or solve, but listening to truly understand. Then one afternoon, the opportunity came. Josh came home with a clearly sad face. Usually, Sarah would ask, "What's wrong, honey?" And when Josh answered vaguely, she would give advice or try to cheer him up. But this time, remembering the moment in the candlelight, Sarah did something different. She sat down beside Josh, said nothing for a few minutes, just simply being there with him. Then she said, "I can see that you seem sad. Would you like to share with me?" Josh looked at his mother, seeming to consider whether it was safe to share. Then the boy began to tell about being teased by friends for his dream of becoming an artist. They said, "I'm weird. The drawing has no future." Sarah's first instinct was to say, "Don't listen to them. You're very talented." But she remembered what she had just learned about listening with the heart. Instead, she asked, "How did you feel when you heard them say that?" And that was the moment Josh felt truly seen for the first time. Not to be fixed, not to be quickly comforted, but to be understood. boy said, "I felt lonely, Mom. I wondered if I was wrong to be different." Sarah felt her heart tighten. For the first time, she truly heard her child's pain, not just a problem to be solved. She understood that Josh didn't need someone to tell him what was right or wrong. He needed someone to understand the loneliness of facing pressure to be like everyone else. This is what Buddhism calls compassionate listening, the ability to listen not just with our ears but with our whole heart. When we listen with compassion, we don't try to change or fix the other person. We simply create a safe space for them to be themselves. "You know," Sarah said, her voice gentle, "I've also felt lonely when I had to be different. That feeling is very painful, isn't it?" Josh nodded, his eyes brightening with the feeling of being understood. "What did you do, Mom?" "I learned that what makes us special is also what makes us valuable. But the most important thing I learned is, you're not alone, honey. I see you, I understand you, and I love you for being Josh, not for being like anyone else." That was the moment Josh felt unconditional love for the first time. Not because he was good, not because he did something right, but simply because he was Josh with all his complex emotions. But what Sarah didn't expect was that Josh's next response would completely change how she understood the role of a mother. The boy looked at her and asked, "Mom, why don't you ever tell me about times when you're sad?" And that question opened a door Sarah never knew existed. Josh's question awakened Sarah from an illusion she didn't know she was living in, the illusion that to be loved and respected by her child, she had to always be strong, always have answers, always be perfect. "Why don't you ever tell me about times when you're sad?" This question was like a light shining into the dark corner Sarah had kept hidden for years. She realized that she had created an invisible distance by always playing the role of the mother who had everything under control. For the first time in her life, Sarah decided to do something she thought she would never do with her child. She decided to be truly honest. "You know," she began, her voice slightly trembling, "I also have times when I feel scared. Times when I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. Some nights I lie awake, wondering if I'm a good mother." Josh's eyes widened. This was the first time he saw his mother not as a superhuman, but as a real person with real emotions. Sarah continued, "Today, when I saw you sad because friends teased you, I also felt heartbroken. I want to protect you from all hurt, but I know I can't. And that makes me feel helpless." Something miraculous happened. Instead of losing her child's respect, Sarah found Josh coming closer to her. The boy said, "Mom, you also have times when you don't know what to do." I thought only I felt that way." And in that moment, Sarah understood a profound truth that Buddhism had taught for thousands of years. Perfection creates distance. Honesty creates connection. When we have the courage to show vulnerability, we create safe space for others to be vulnerable too. Josh began sharing fears he had never dared tell anyone. Fear of not being good enough, fear of disappointing Mom, fear that his dreams wouldn't be accepted. And Sarah, for the first time, felt she was truly connecting with her child, not with the perfect version she wanted Josh to become, but with the real Josh. David, when he heard Sarah tell this story, was initially skeptical. If we show weakness to our children, how can they trust us? But then he realized the opposite was true. When children see that parents are also human with real emotions, they learn that having emotions is normal. They don't need to be perfect to be loved. The change in Sarah's family was remarkable. Josh began sharing more, not just about successes, but also about failures and fears. Michael also began talking about work pressures instead of pretending everything was fine. And most importantly, Emma, the little girl we met from the beginning, also began learning from this family that she didn't need to be perfect to be loved. But this was only the beginning of an even deeper transformation journey. After the breakthrough discoveries about the power of honesty and deep listening, Sarah realized that her family needed a way to sustain these connections. They needed to turn these special moments into a daily way of living. This is when Sarah discovered what Buddhism calls family mindfulness, the art of being fully present with each other in everyday moments. Instead of trying to create big events, Sarah started with small changes. Every morning, instead of rushing Josh to get ready for school in chaotic noise, she spent 5 minutes truly being present with her son. Not to check what Josh had done, but to simply look into his eyes and ask, "How are you feeling as you start this new day?" Their mornings completely transformed. Josh, instead of feeling rushed, began sharing about what he was looking forward to in the day, worries, or exciting things that might happen. Sarah realized that these 5 minutes of mindfulness were more valuable than 30 minutes of racing against time. Michael, initially skeptical about these meditation practices, also began changing his approach. He experimented with turning off his phone for the first 30 minutes when he came home, spending time truly being present with his family before diving into work. The results were amazing. Josh began running to hug Dad when Michael came home, instead of just saying, "Hi, Dad," mechanically. Michael realized how many precious moments with his son he had missed just because he was distracted by other important things. Their family also created a new evening ritual. Instead of everyone going to their separate rooms after dinner, they spent 15 minutes sharing about their day, not about what they had done, but about the emotions they had experienced. In Buddhist philosophy, This is called Sangha, a community of practice. Sarah's family was creating a small community where each person could be safe to be themselves, to share both joys and sorrows. Emma, through observing Josh's family, also began to understand that there was another way to live. She saw that in Josh's family, people didn't need to be perfect to be loved. This opened hope in Emma's heart, hope that perhaps she too could be loved just for being Emma. But the most important thing Sarah learned was, mindfulness isn't about adding another item to the to-do list. It's a completely different approach to life. Instead of doing everything hastily and distracted, she learned to do fewer things, but with complete presence. When Josh told about his school day, Sarah didn't listen while thinking about what needed to be prepared for tomorrow. She truly listened, looked into his eyes, and felt the emotions Josh was conveying. When Michael came home stressed from work, Sarah didn't immediately give advice or try to solve problems. She just stayed there, listened, and created safe space for him to express emotions without being judged. And the miracle was that their family didn't just become closer, they became happier. Because when we're truly present with each other, love naturally flows. But this journey led Sarah to an even deeper discovery about healing wounds from the past. One evening, while practicing deep listening with Josh, Sarah suddenly realized a painful truth. When Josh shared about his fear of not being accepted, she heard echoes of herself in her child's words. She remembered her own childhood, a childhood where love also depended on achievements, where she learned to hide emotions to be allowed to stay good. And she realized the shocking truth. She was repeating exactly what her parents had done to her. This is what Buddhism calls generational karma, how unhealed wounds and behavioral patterns are passed from one generation to the next, often without anyone realizing it. Sarah's parents were also good people who loved their child wholeheartedly. But they only knew how to express love the way they had learned from their parents. And so, a chain of unconscious wounds was passed through many generations. Sarah remembered times she felt lonely when only praised for high grades, but no one asked about what she truly felt. She remembered having to hide sadness for fear of disappointing her parents. And now, she was unconsciously creating the same emotions in her child. But this awareness, instead of making Sarah feel guilty, brought her a powerful sense of liberation. Because for the first time, she understood that she could choose differently. She could break this chain. David also had a similar realization when he discovered that his habit of working too much was exactly like his father, a man he had once resented for always being absent. He was repeating exactly what he hated most about his childhood. And Emma, in conversations with Josh, began to understand that the feeling of not being good enough that she always carried might not be the truth about herself. Maybe it was just the way her family had learned to express love. The wonderful thing about this awareness is that it opens the possibility of healing not just for the current generation, but also for the past and future. When Sarah began loving Josh unconditionally, she was also healing the child within herself, the child who still longed to be loved just for existing. In Buddhist philosophy, this is called transforming karma, the ability to change negative behavioral patterns into positive ones through awareness and compassion. Sarah began having different conversations with Josh, conversations she wished she had had with her parents. She told Josh, "You know, Mom and Dad also make mistakes sometimes. And the most important thing we want you to know is, whatever you do, we still love you. Our love doesn't depend on what you do, but on who you are." And when Josh heard these words, something miraculous happened. The boy not only felt unconditional love for himself, but also began to understand that his grandparents, despite their limitations, had also loved in the way they knew how. This is how a family heals not just the present but also the past and creates a new legacy for the future. But this story has an even more beautiful ending. 6 months after the healing journey began, I had the chance to meet Sarah's family again. The transformation I witnessed was not just amazing, it was living proof of the power of conscious love. Josh, the boy who was once quiet and withdrawn, was now radiant and confident. Not because he had become perfect, but because he had learned that he was loved, even with his imperfections. He still had difficult days, still had fears, but now he had a family where these emotions were welcomed just as much as joy. Michael had learned the art of truly being present. He still worked hard, but now he knew that real success was measured by the quality of connections, not the number of working hours. On weekend evenings, instead of bringing work home, he spent time listening to Josh share about the new paintings he had created. Sarah had transformed from an anxious, controlling mother into a present and peaceful mother. She had learned that her role was not to create happiness for her child, but to create safe space where her child could find his own happiness. And Emma. She had honest conversations with her parents about feeling like she always had to be perfect. Emma's family began to change, learning from Josh's family's example about how to love without conditions. But the most amazing thing was how this love rippled outward beyond the family. Josh, feeling unconditional love at home, began showing compassion to friends at school. He became the friend that other children sought when they needed to be listened to and understood. In Buddhist philosophy, this is called compassion rippling. When we are loved unconditionally, we naturally spread that love to others. Sarah told me about a recent evening when the whole family was sitting in the living room. No special activities were planned, no goals needed to be achieved. They were simply being together, Josh drawing, Michael reading, Sarah knitting. Occasionally someone would share a thought or a funny story. That was the moment I realized, Sarah said, we had finally come home to each other. Not physically home, but emotionally home. Home to real love. This is what I call the miracle of presence. When we learn to truly be present with our children, without expectations, without our own agenda, without the need to control, love naturally flows. And that's exactly what Buddhist masters have known for thousands of years. Love is not something we create or earn. Love is something that always exists, just waiting for us to create enough stillness and space for it to be felt. But this journey doesn't end here. Because when we learn to love consciously, we also learn to turn that love into a daily practice. Three months after I first shared Sarah's story with our Where Hearts Rest community, something beautiful began happening. Parents from around the world started writing to tell me how they were applying these ancient Buddhist principles in their own families. Maria from Texas wrote, "After hearing Sarah's story about morning mindfulness, I decided to try spending just 5 minutes each morning, truly seeing my daughter before the chaos began. Yesterday, instead of rushing her to brush her teeth, I sat with her and asked how she was feeling about her day ahead. She told me she was nervous about a presentation, and for the first time, I felt like I was actually parenting her heart, not just her schedule. This is the miracle of what Buddhism calls practical Dharma, taking profound spiritual wisdom and weaving it into the ordinary moments of family life. You don't need to become a monk or meditate for hours. You just need to bring consciousness to the moments you're already living. Sarah's family had discovered this too. Their morning ritual evolved into something sacred, yet simple. Before Josh left for school, Sarah would place her hand on his shoulder and say, "Tell me one thing you're looking forward to today, and one thing that feels challenging." This 90-second practice became the foundation that held their entire day together. Michael created his own version when he came home from work. Instead of immediately diving into household tasks or checking his phone, he would sit with Josh for 10 minutes, not to discuss anything specific, but simply to transition from work dad to present dad. Josh began calling this Daddy's landing time. But here's what I want you to notice. None of these practices required special skills or dramatic life changes. They were simply about bringing Buddhist mindfulness, the art of loving attention, to moments that were already happening. David, inspired by Sarah's journey, began his own experiment. Instead of asking his daughter about homework and grades during their drive to school, he started asking, What's alive in your heart today? The first few times, she looked at him strangely. But gradually, their car rides transformed from task management sessions into soul connection time. Emma's family, witnessing these changes in their community, finally had their own breakthrough conversation. Emma's mother asked her the question that changed everything. "Sweetheart, do you ever feel like you have to be perfect for us to love you?" Emma's tears were the beginning of their healing. Fill in the blank moment. Take a pause here and complete this sentence. One daily moment where I could practice mindful presence with my family is. These weren't perfect families suddenly becoming more perfect. These were real families discovering that love isn't about getting everything right. It's about being genuinely present for what's actually happening right now. Six months later, David wrote to me with a story that perfectly illustrates how family healing creates waves far beyond our homes. My daughter came home last week and told me about her friend who was crying at lunch because her parents were getting divorced. Instead of just feeling sorry for her friend, my daughter said something that stopped me in my tracks. I told her that feelings are allowed to be big and that she doesn't have to be okay all the time. "I learned that from you, Dad." I realized my daughter was teaching her friends the emotional safety I had been learning to give her. This is what Buddhism calls compassion in action, when the love we receive transforms into love we give. When children experience unconditional acceptance at home, they naturally become safe harbors for other children who are struggling. Josh had become this kind of friend at school. Other kids began seeking him out during difficult moments, somehow sensing that he was a person who wouldn't judge or try to fix them. His art teacher noticed that Josh had started an informal group where kids could draw together during lunch, creating what she called a healing space without anyone trying to create a healing space. Sarah's transformation rippled into her workplace too. She found herself listening to colleagues differently, responding to stress with presence rather than reactivity. Her team began commenting that meetings felt calmer when Sarah was there, though they couldn't quite name why. Challenge prompt. Think of one relationship outside your family where you could practice the compassionate listening you're learning at home. How might that change the dynamic? But perhaps the most profound ripple was generational. Emma's grandmother, who had raised her own children with the strict perfectionism of her era, began noticing the changes in Emma's family. At first, she was skeptical. "Children need discipline and high standards," she would say. But then she witnessed a moment that shifted everything. During a family gathering, Emma made a mistake that spilled juice on her grandmother's white tablecloth. Instead of the shame and frantic apologies that would have followed in the past, Emma simply said, "I'm sorry, Grandma. I'll help clean it up." Her parents responded with gentle understanding rather than embarrassment or anger. Emma's grandmother later told her daughter, I've been thinking about that moment all week. Emma wasn't afraid. She made a mistake, and she wasn't afraid. I don't think I ever gave your mother that gift, the freedom to be imperfect without fear. That conversation led to healing conversations spanning 3 generations. Emma's grandmother began sharing stories about her own childhood, her own fears, her own wishes that she had known then what she was learning now about love. Michael's elderly father, witnessing the warmth in Michael's family, confessed, "I worked so much when you were young because I thought that was love. I see now that love is much simpler than I made it." Ranking exercise. Rank these ripple effects from most important to least important for your family. 1. Children becoming more compassionate with friends. 2. Workplace relationships improving. 3. Healing with extended family. 4. Creating new family traditions. A year later, Sarah wrote to me with an update that beautifully captures the ongoing nature of this path. I want to be honest with your listeners. This isn't a fairy tale where everything became perfect and stayed that way. Last month, Josh and I had our biggest argument ever about screen time. Michael went through a stressful period at work where he slipped back into old patterns. I caught myself trying to control family happiness again. But here's what's different now. We have a way back to each other. This is the most important truth I can share with you. Conscious family love is not a destination you arrive at and then maintain effortlessly. It's a practice you return to again and again, each time with deeper wisdom and more compassion for the human journey. Josh, now 12, has learned to recognize when his family is drifting apart. He'll sometimes say, "I think we need a power outage night," their code for turning off devices and just being together. The boy who once felt invisible in his family had become one of its wisdom keepers. Emma's transformation has been remarkable. She recently started a blog called Perfectly Imperfect Kids, where she writes about learning to be herself. Her parents were initially worried about her sharing personal struggles online, but they realized she was creating exactly the kind of safe space for other children that she had longed for. Either or choice. When your family faces difficult times, do you typically focus on solving the problem or on staying connected through the problem? David discovered that conscious parenting deepened rather than ended as his daughter became a teenager. "I thought it would get easier," he shared, "but actually, it gets more nuanced. She needs me to love her independence and her continued need for security simultaneously. Buddhism has taught me to hold both truths." The most beautiful letter came from Maria in Texas, whose morning practice with her daughter had evolved into something she never expected. "Yesterday, my daughter, who's now 16, woke up early and made me coffee. She said, 'Mom, I want to ask you how you're feeling about your day ahead.' I realized that all those mornings of mindful presence hadn't just helped her feel seen, they had taught her how to see others. She's becoming the kind of person who notices when people need to be heard. Ranking exercise. Consider these ongoing practices and rank them by which feels most important for your family's continued growth. Daily check-ins, weekly device, free time, monthly family meetings, seasonal family retreats. This is the ultimate gift of bringing Buddhist wisdom into family life. We don't just raise children who feel loved, we raise children who know how to love. And they carry that gift into every relationship for the rest of their lives. The journey continues, one mindful moment at a time. We have journeyed together through a long path, from families that appeared perfect on the outside but felt empty within, to awakening moments when candlelight flickered during a power outage, to the miraculous transformation when true love found its way home. We witnessed Sarah learning to release control in order to rediscover connection. We saw Josh transform from a silent boy into a compassionate friend. We felt Michael's change as he learned that presence is more valuable than perfection. And we followed Emma as she found the courage to be herself in a world that constantly demands perfection. But perhaps the most important thing we learned is this: love is not something we must create or earn. Love always exists, just waiting for us to create enough quiet space for it to be felt. Good parents who raise children who feel unloved don't do so because they don't love their children, but because they haven't yet learned how to let that love flow naturally. Buddhist wisdom has taught us that family mindfulness isn't about adding another task to our to-do list. It's a completely new approach to life, a way of living with loving presence in every ordinary moment. If today's story touched your heart, I invite you to share in the comments what from this journey made you look at your family differently. Perhaps you recognized yourself in Sarah, or in Josh, or in Emma. Maybe you saw your family in those silent moments at the dinner table, or in those efforts to control love. Let us know, because when we share these stories, we create a community of healing. If you'd like to continue this journey with us, please subscribe to Where Hearts Rest and ring the notification bell. Each week, we'll explore new stories about bringing ancient wisdom into modern family life. And please share this video with people you love. They might also be searching for the path home to true love. As you return to your family today, carry this story in your heart. Remember that every moment is an opportunity to begin again, to love more deeply, to see more clearly. Your heart knows the way home. Trust it. The ripples of conscious love that began with Sarah's family, with David's courage to be vulnerable, with Emma's journey toward authenticity, these ripples are now flowing through every family that chooses presence over perfection, connection over control, being over doing. You are not alone in wanting deeper connection with your children. You are not alone in feeling like love sometimes gets lost in translation. You are part of a growing community of parents who are choosing to break generational patterns and create new legacies of conscious love. Until we meet again in this sacred space, may your family find the peace that passes all understanding. May your dinner tables become altars of authentic sharing. May your ordinary moments become doorways to extraordinary connection. Where hearts rest, love is forever home. Thank you for trusting me with this hour of your life. Thank you for having the courage to love more consciously. The world needs families like yours, families choosing healing over habit, presence over performance. Until hearts rest again,